wife cheating, and child suffering. It was early Sunday when my doorbell rang. I was somewhat surprised as I had not told anyone where I now lived. My surprise only increased when I opened the door. Standing in the hallway were my wife, her parents, her sister, and my brother-in-law. I restrained my first impulse to quickly slam the door in their faces. I'd just been raised better. Besides, I thought about my father-in-law and mother-in-law, Chester and Dottie Hanson, and their youngest daughter, Marion. I would never intentionally be rude to them. My wife, Debbie, on the other hand, evoked in me emotions far less benign. Slamming the door in her face would have been a pleasure. "Jack, we're here to discuss this problem in a civilized manner. Mom, Dad, and Marion feel they can help me deal with this situation. Dave is just naturally included in our family affairs. Please let us in," Debbie insisted, not doubting that I would agree. I shrugged and stepped aside to let them all in. I didn't have enough furniture for them all to sit down, so I brought in 2 more chairs from my kitchenette for Dave and I to use. Then I brought a 6-pack of soda and another 6-pack of beer into the room and set them on the rickety plastic and wood structure that served as an end table. "Everyone is welcome to help themselves to a soda or a beer. That's all I have to offer," I concluded, uncorking a bottle of Miller. "You should know that we're here to try to find the reason for your inexcusable actions," Debbie began. "None of us thought you were the kind of person who would prevaricate and lie. We'd like to know why you did it and if you've come to your senses." Debbie's tone annoyed the hell out of me, but I didn't immediately respond to her adequately. Instead, I pondered her question. I looked at Dottie and relaxed. She was tense and clenched her hands together. It was obvious she was upset, and I didn't want to aggravate her condition. I shifted my gaze to Chester and saw the anger on his face. It wasn't surprising. He was a good man and thought his family was the most important thing in his life. I noticed Marion's eyes were moist as she watched me. Dave was reading the label on his can of beer and didn't look in my direction. I knew enough about how the concept of family worked to be sure that Dave was practically forced to attend this meeting, and he wasn't here because he wanted to be. "Well, Debbie, I'm sorry to be such a disappointment to your whole family, but it doesn't change anything. I'm going through with the divorce. Your lawyer can discuss the details with mine. The drama here is unnecessary and useless," I added. "You're going to throw away almost 20 years of marriage for some fool?" Debbie demanded an answer. "That's not like you, Jack. You've always been responsible and balanced. You've never shirked your responsibilities as a father and provider. That doesn't make any sense." "You can blame it on a good old midlife crisis crazy if you want, Debbie," I replied. "You can blame drugs, excessive drinking, blackmail, or aliens if that will help you make more sense. The end result will still be, I'm divorcing you, regardless of the reason or whether it makes sense to you. Just accept it." "Jack," Chester intervened. "We hired a private investigator to find out what's going on with you. He's only been working for us for a couple days, but he quickly gave us your new address. However, he hasn't been able to find out anything about a woman who might be interested in you. Does such a woman even exist?" That was unexpected. I should have known Chester wouldn't accept the situation so easily. He needed facts and names, so he hired a private spy. I tried to quickly recall my actions of the previous 2 days, tried to remember everything I could do and all the places I had gone. I couldn't remember anything that would give away my position. I hadn't discussed my personal affairs with anyone. There was nothing that anyone could find out about me except where I was living now. I don't know what offends me more, the fact that you're calling me a liar, Chester, or the fact that you don't seem to think I'm capable of finding a woman who finds me acceptable, I replied calmly. I don't have to explain my actions to anyone. I especially don't have to tell you who I'm in love with. If there was another woman, she would be a real lady, and I wouldn't drag her name into this storm of shit. Chester didn't mean to say you're a liar or that you wouldn't be a great catch for any smart woman, Jack. It's just that no one who knows you, and I mean no one, can believe you betrayed your marriage vows, Dottie replied conciliatingly. You've always been a strong, reliable husband and father. This desire for a divorce is out of character for you. We are concerned for so many reasons. I understand your confusion, Dottie. I would give anything not to hurt you or Chester, but things happen and people change. With the utmost respect for both of you, I'm telling you that I no longer want to be married to your daughter. I wheezed with a suddenly dry throat. You all need to accept that fact. Hey, Jack, if you're afraid to admit you made a mistake and you want to go back, I'll forgive you, Debbie sobbed. I'll never throw that gaff in your face and use it to turn the kids against you. I promise. How's that sound to you? Debbie was ready to forgive me. She was ready to get her unfaithful husband back. Her statement caught me off guard. I had to ask a question. Why, Debbie? Why do you forgive me and accept me back into your arms in bed? Why? Debbie repeated. Because we belong to each other, Jack. Because we promised each other almost 20 years ago to stay united. Because children need a father. That's why, Jack. I saw Marian flinch slightly at her sister's answer. We must have both noticed the same thing. Debbie's argument lacked any credibility. Is that all, Debbie? I asked. You're going to take me back just because we made a vow to each other? Not because you really love me? You say the kids need me, as if I'll suddenly stop seeing them when we divorce. They're old enough to carry that burden. In a couple years, they'll be on their own. But even then, I won't leave them. Don't kid yourself. I will still be an important part of my children's lives. I promise you that. Of course I love you, Jack, Debbie said. It's just that you're being so stupid. I just don't want to pretend that I'm not upset or hurt by your actions lately. You left me, probably for another woman. How can I feel love for you in that situation? It's not like you can't love me, and that hurts. It hurts so much. I've always loved you, Debbie. I still do, but it's not enough. I have to move on before life passes me by. I suggest you do the same. I think this meeting is pretty much over, I stated sadly. Debbie, Marian, and Dottie were crying and wiping their eyes with tissues when I opened the door. Chester frowned and Dave seemed relieved. As Marian moved toward the door, she stopped to give me a hug. I'd always gotten along very well with Debbie's little sister, and I was terribly embarrassed that in her eyes I hadn't lived up to expectations. I just hoped she would never truly realize it. Debbie was the last to leave. She looked very sad as she walked right up to me and seemed to look into my soul. She seemed to be at a complete loss. She was searching my face for some sign or something. I just nodded and led her by the elbow to the door. Once I managed to close and lock the door, I walked over to the medicine cabinet and grabbed a couple painkillers. I then laid down on the bed, exhausted mentally and physically. Eventually, I fell asleep. Luckily for me, my job was very stressful. I have no idea how I would have gotten through the next few weeks if I didn't have something to distract me from my personal problems. I spent some time trying to determine if anyone was following me. To and from work, I traveled different roads. Every now and then, I would make a sharp turn without signaling my intentions. I didn't see a single car swerve to follow me. Either the private detective was on my tail or he was very good. It was Thursday evening, more than 2 weeks from the day Debbie's family showed up at my door for a conference call, when I got a call on my cell phone from Marian. I had changed my cell phone and gotten a new number, so I was surprised she had it. I had only given it to both of my sons, so it was obvious that Marian had swiped it from one of them. Jack! Marian yelled into the phone. Danny is missing! She didn't come home from school today. I've called all the houses, but no one has seen her. She never leaves the house without calling. Have you seen her by any chance? Danny is Marian's 14-year-old daughter. She is a beautiful girl, but very shy and quiet. She still has an older brother and a younger sister, but she is the one who has always been my favorite. Ever since she learned to walk, she would run to me and wrap her little arms around my legs. Marian, Dottie, and Debbie often said that Danny had no time for anyone, but she always came to me. As she grew older, our bond only grew stronger. I always took the time to ask her about school and friends. I played soccer with her and showed her how to catch in softball. When we got together as a family, Danny was usually somewhere near me. No, Marian, I haven't, I replied worriedly. You've probably tried her cell phone by now, haven't you? Have you tried contacting any of her teachers at school? They might know something. Has she been healthy? She's been unusually quiet and withdrawn lately. Something's bothering her, but she won't tell me what it is, Jack. I was even thinking of asking you to talk to her. She's always talking to you, Marian sobbed. Can you tell me where she might be? I can't, Marian, I answered. I'll take a drive around the neighborhood and see if I can find out anything. Call me as soon as you know anything about her. I'll do the same if I find her. Thank you, Jack, Marian sobbed. I knew you would help. Driving around the neighborhood, I tried to imagine what could have happened to Danny. I stopped at her softball coach's house to ask if she had seen Danny at school that day, and if she was okay then. "I haven't seen her today, Jack," replied a concerned Mrs. Mack. "The water main at the middle school burst this morning. They let the kids out early. As you know, her family lives close enough for her to walk home. I have no idea why she didn't make it." I thanked Mrs. Mack for the information and walked back to the car. I decided to drive past the school and then take the route Danny usually took to her house. Soon I pulled up to the school and drove slowly towards Danny's house. I didn't see anything unusual. I did, however, see many cars, including Debbie's car, parked in Marion's driveway. Knowing that Marion would call me if Danny showed up, I kept driving. By this time, darkness had fallen and a nearly full moon had risen. A half-mile from Marion's house was a wooded area of about 100 acres. As I drove past it, I remembered how Danny had insisted that I walk there with her on Sunday afternoon. She led me down the trail to a very elaborate tree stand that a deer hunter had built. It was more like a small cabin 20 feet above the forest floor. It had 4 walls and a roof and window openings on all sides. I climbed the stairs with her and looked around. The furniture consisted of 2 chairs and a small army cot. Cans of beans and bottles of water were stored on a small shelf that looked like a pantry. Danny said it was her private place, like a fortress of solitude. She retreated there when socializing with her siblings, friends, or parents became too much for her. She told me that no one else in her family knew about this little sanctuary. Since I had no choice, I parked the car and found a path that led to this tree. As I climbed the stairs, a sense of foreboding swept over me. That's where I found Danny, who was sleeping on a cot, but I couldn't get any response from her when I tried to wake her up. I put my ear to her mouth and caught very shallow breathing. Then, in a beam of moonlight, I saw the prescription bottle. There wasn't enough light to read the writing. I realized that the situation was not good. I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket and dialed 911. Briefly explained my concerns as well as my location. The ambulance was about 20 minutes away, so I said I would drive to them to save time. The dispatcher told me not to move Danny in case she suffered any physical injuries. I told him I would meet the paramedics on Route 92, a few miles south of the town ball field, and hung up. I put the empty pill bottle in my pocket, carefully slung Danny over my shoulder, and cautiously walked down the stairs. I made my way as quickly as I could through the thick woods to my car and rushed towards the ambulance. A few minutes later, I stopped and flashed my headlights when I saw the ambulance approaching in the other lane. Soon, Danny was loaded into the car, and the paramedics were working feverishly on her as the rescue vehicle raced towards the hospital. I handed them the empty medicine bottle, hoping it would help in Danny's treatment. Following, I dialed Marion's number. When she answered, there was fury in her voice. "Jack! Have you heard anything about Danny? Did you find her? Please, Jack, tell me you found her!" Marion begged. "Marion, she's in an ambulance on her way to County Hospital. I can't tell you anything else but that it's pretty serious and you need to get there as soon as possible," I said. "County Hospital!" Marion shrieked and started sobbing so hard she couldn't speak. Something clicked in the receiver, and then it sounded, "Jack, it's Debbie. What happened to Danny? Where was she? How did you find her?" she asked nonstop. "Debbie, all you need to know is that Danny is seriously ill and on her way to County Hospital. The paramedics are doing everything they can, but someone has to get Marion to the hospital. Safely, but as soon as possible," I stated, turning off my phone to focus on driving. I waited outside the emergency room. Since Danny was a minor and her parents had called to say they were on their way, I wasn't given any information. I was pacing the floor when a police officer tracked me down. I was still answering his questions, which seemed to be asked by all the relatives I had brought into the waiting room. As soon as the police officer finished his questions, I was besieged by Danny's relatives. I found Danny in the deer stand, which is actually more like a little cabin in the Anderson woods behind your house. I remembered she showed it to me once a couple years ago. It was the only place it occurred to me to look. She was there, but almost in a coma. There was an empty medicine bottle lying next to her. I called the ambulance and met them on Highway 92. Then I called Marion, and that's all I know. For more information, you need to contact the doctors and nurses, I concluded. At that moment, a nurse came out of the emergency room, and this group rushed toward her. I took this opportunity to slip to my car and then back to my dingy apartment. Once there, I drank a couple beers and went to bed. Sleep didn't come easily as I worried about my niece, a beautiful teenage girl. Why did she do this? Would she recover? I sincerely hoped I had found her in time. It seemed I had just fallen asleep when the doorbell rang, and rang again. Staggering, I reached the living room and opened the door. Before I could even identify the caller, I was grabbed in a hug. Slowly, I realized I was being hugged by Dottie. Chester and Debbie were standing behind her in the doorway. Since Dottie couldn't form a single coherent word, Chester decided to fill me in on the situation. "Danny is out of danger." Dottie demanded that we come in and say thank you in person. "Jack, everyone in the family owes you a debt of gratitude. If you hadn't found Danny when you did, the outcome would have been very different and much worse," Chester said with obvious excitement. "You saved her life, Jack." I felt tears run down my cheeks as I hugged Dottie back. I had done something good for Marion and her parents and saved a wonderful girl's life. It helped relieve the weight of guilt caused by me demanding a divorce from their daughter. I noticed Debbie looking through the open door into my bedroom. My dented bed was clearly visible and noticeably empty. I realized that Debbie was probably looking for my mistress. She certainly wouldn't find her here. Debbie then entered the room and offered, "Jack, this terrible event brings us, our family, closer together. Sometimes a very negative incident can turn around and create very good things. This could be one of those times, Jack. Why don't you go back home where you belong? You've had your space, your affair. I guess we can call it that. Now is the time to forgive and forget." "Debbie, you surprise me. It's hard to believe you'd forgive me so easily. I don't think I could be so generous if I were in a different position." "How can you live with a man you don't even trust?" I wondered. "Jack, if you tell me it won't happen again, I'll have to believe you. I think you've realized how important family is to you," Debbie reasoned. "I'm not thrilled with your actions lately, but I'm willing to work to overcome it." "I think that's the difference between you and me, Debbie. I believe that in marriage and in any partnership there are certain boundaries. Both spouses have to agree to them and also honor them," I added. "Our marriage is beyond repair. We need to move on with our lives and not waste time on what was or what could have been." Debbie sobbed, turned, and hurried out of the room. Dottie recoiled back and looked at me like I had two heads. Chester's face was red, and his anger was obvious. "You've always been stubborn, Jack," Dottie said, "but you've also always been honorable and dependable." "Well, Dottie, I seem to have changed and apparently not for the better," I shrugged. "I wonder about that, Jack," Dottie replied, shaking her head slowly. "I do wonder why." After Debbie and her parents left, I decided to shower and get ready for work. It was still early and I managed to get very little sleep, but I didn't want to waste a sick day when I felt like shit. Sick days are for golf and baseball. It was already 3 in the afternoon when I got a call from Marion. She was extremely grateful for my efforts to save Danny. "Jack, I don't know what's going on between you and Debbie, and I'm not even going to ask you about it. I just want you to know that you can do no wrong where Danny and I are concerned." "I don't have words to describe how I feel," Marion exclaimed. "Believe me, Marion, I'm honored that you thought of me in my time of need, and I'm glad I was able to help Danny. She's a lovely girl and practically the daughter I never had. There's nothing I wouldn't do for her." "That's why I called, Jack. I have one more request. Danny has to come home tomorrow. She's abandoning us, and she won't tell anyone why. She wants to live with you, Jack," Marion said. "Do you realize what's going on?" "It's a complete surprise to me, Marion. We've always gotten along well, but I've never given her any reason to think she could leave her family to come live with me. There's nothing romantic between me and Danny if that's what you're thinking." I stated it bluntly. "It had crossed my mind. I'm ashamed to admit it, Jack. But when I thought over everything I know about you, I realized that you would never take advantage of a nice young girl in difficulty, or any woman for that matter. You don't have any other woman, do you? You just don't want to tell anyone about the real problem in your marriage, whatever it is," Marion argued. "Marion, I can only repeat that my behavior with Danny has always been perfectly appropriate. I would strongly resent any suggestion on the part of anyone that it has not been. I'm sure Danny would say the same. She's already done that, Jack. She's been questioned by the police and social services, Marion said. She didn't want to tell them anything, except that you've always been wonderful to her. But you've never even used profanity in her presence. The psychologist suggested that you attend tomorrow's interview with her. She has concluded that Danny trusts you far more than she trusts her father or me. They don't want to let her go until they're sure she won't try again, Jack. Could you be in the room with us when she's interviewed tomorrow? Marion, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not her parent, and under the circumstances, I'm not very popular with the rest of your family. How does Dave feel about that? I asked. To be honest, he surprised me with his objection, said Marion. He thinks that if you've decided to leave the family, you shouldn't hang out with us anymore. I know you've never been close, but his attitude surprised me. Did something happen between you two? That's a question you should ask him, Marion. I don't think I did anything to cause animosity, except divorce Debbie, but I doubt that gave him sleepless nights, I joked. But getting back to your request for me to be present at Danny's next interview, I think it would be best if I didn't attend. She's your daughter and your responsibility. You'll do a great job with that. That same evening, I was visited by a female police detective. From her questions, it appeared that she thought I might know more about Danny's problems than I had originally admitted in my conversation with the police officer at the hospital. She hinted that my close relationship with my sister's niece might have been abnormal. She inquired if the real reason for my divorce was that I liked young girls and could no longer respond to mature women. I shoved the detective out the door, telling her I'd had enough of her sick fantasies, accusations, and assumptions. Maybe work makes them think the worst, but I couldn't help but assume that she was the one in need of therapy. Some twisted fool. I heard that Danny came home the next day, but she never gave a reason for the self-attempt on her life. My informant, my youngest son, a high school senior, told me that she was extremely withdrawn and had to attend therapy several times a week. Almost 2 weeks later, things turned to crap. Lately, as has become my custom, I've been drinking a couple beers more than necessary before bed. I'm always a heavy sleeper, and a few beers only reinforce that tendency. But something caused me to awaken from a sound sleep in the early morning hours. Suddenly, the light came on, and I sat up abruptly. After blinking a few times and wiping the sleep from my eyes, I saw a female detective standing in my bedroom doorway. Behind her stood a uniformed police officer and my landlord, still with the keys in his hand. "What the hell?" I shouted. "Are you guys crazy? You can't barge in on a law-abiding citizen. I'll have your badge numbers, and on top of that, I'll sue your asses," I threatened. "You're under arrest," announced the detective with ill-concealed delight. "This officer will read you your rights. Then we're going to throw your perverted ass in jail." At that moment, I felt an arm around my neck from behind, and I almost shit the bed. With real felt fear, I turned my head to see who those arms belonged to. "Uncle Jack," Danny sobbed. "I just wanted to stay at your place. I'm sorry if I got you into trouble." How the hell did Danny end up in my bed? I tried to focus on the night before. I'd had, a couple beers, maybe a couple too many, and went to bed. Up until that point, I hadn't even seen Danny. I hadn't let her into my apartment, and I certainly hadn't invited her to join me in my bed. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse, Debbie and her parents walked into my crowded bedroom. Dave was clearly seething. "You asshole!" he growled, trying to push past the cop to get to me. "She's just a kid, you bastard." Fortunately for Dave or me, or maybe for both of us, the cop was able to stop Dave's forward progress. He calmed down enough to pretend he wanted to get rid of me while the officer restrained him. However, his insults did not slow the pace of his movement. My confusion was quickly replaced by anger. How the hell does a guy get in trouble when he's sleeping alone in his bed? Dave's name-calling got to me, too. Who does he think he is? "You cowardly shit," I growled back, getting out of bed. "You've got a lot of balls coming to me and bad-mouthing me. Let's see who's the real asshole here, asshole." While I was talking, I went for Dave. Since the room wasn't very big, it only took me a couple steps to get in front of his face. He had already stopped screaming when I stood up, and by the time I got to him, he was already backing away. Somehow he managed to twist around so that Marion was standing between us and the cop. Danny, are you okay, baby? Marion asked. Why are you here and why are you in Uncle Jack's bed? You have to realize what this looks like. Jack is going to be arrested and will probably spend a long time in jail unless you can convince us that he didn't do anything wrong. That's clearly not going to be an easy task. What happened, honey? I just couldn't live at home anymore, Mom, Danny whispered. I didn't want to get Uncle Jack in trouble. He didn't even know I was here. I snuck in through the bathroom window. He was asleep, so I just laid down next to him. I felt safe with Uncle Jack. He never touched me. Never. Not tonight, not any other night. He's not like that. I'll do the questioning here, the detective said. You called the police to help find your daughter, so let us do our job. Danny, why do you feel unsafe at home? Has someone Not in the way you mean, my niece replied. I'm kind of embarrassed to talk about it with everyone here. Danny, I called Debbie and your grandparents when I found your bed empty just after midnight. They helped me find you, Marion said. It was my mom who decided to look for your bike and realized it was gone. It was Debbie's idea to come here to look for you. That's why the police are here now. We called them when we realized you were gone. We were all afraid you'd do something stupid. What do you mean? Like swallowing a bottle of your pills again or making love to Uncle Jack? Danny replied. You think there's something wrong with me? No, honey. We're just worried that you might get confused and do something you'll regret. Your family loves you, and we're all concerned for your safety and health. You can answer the detective's questions in front of everyone, honey. There are no dark secrets in our family. Please just tell the truth and answer her questions, Marion pleaded. Marion, it would be better if she spoke to the detective alone, I suggested as a sudden fear gripped me. You can't put the genie back in the bottle if it breaks loose. It's entirely possible that Danny will say something that not everyone here needs to hear. Jack, that's exactly why I want everyone to hear Danny answer questions, Marion replied. I don't want her to turn into another you with your secrets and very strange behavior. The truth is always better. All right, Mother. If that's what you want, I'll tell the detective what I'm afraid of and why I feel safer with Uncle Jack. I'm afraid of Daddy, Danny confessed. Me? Dave growled. I've never hurt you. I've never done anything that a loving father wouldn't do. Why should you be afraid of me? A few weeks ago, I forgot to bring my baseball glove to school. Since we had a game that day, Mrs. Mack let me go home to get it during class, Danny replied hesitantly. I always take a shortcut through the empty lot behind our house when it's not snowing. That's where I saw Uncle Jack crouched beside his car, which was parked on the street in front of our house. He was throwing up. I ran to see if he was okay, but he quickly got in his car and drove away. I then went to my room to get my glove and heard various bad noises coming from my mom's room. It was like screaming, only a little quieter, so I peeked in to see what was wrong, Danny told us. By this time, the room was completely silent. I could hear my heart beating in my head. Everyone was focused on Danny's story. Dave was starting to look a little more pale. Dad was there naked and calling the woman all sorts of bad words. She was naked too. Oh my God! Exclaimed a shocked Marion. Did your father do this? Are you sure it was him, Danny? Do you know who the woman was? Of course it was Dad. I saw him clearly and I heard his voice. He grabbed the woman by the hair, lifted her head up, and I saw her face. It was Aunt Debbie, Mommy, Danny sobbed. I was too upset to look at anyone, so I studied my feet while a storm of shit raged around me. I was hoping to spare Marion, Chester, and Dottie that bit of objective reality. Danny had seen pretty much the same thing that had disgusted me just minutes before her. I stopped at their house to drop off some borrowed books my son was returning to Marion's son that day. I lost my breakfast on the street before I left. I didn't realize that Danny would be home by now and would see a lot of things that no child should see. Eventually, the detective quelled the almost riot that had started. She then asked Danny to finish her story. The policeman was now standing in the doorway, so no one could leave. Dave was all red and sweaty, and Debbie collapsed on the floor. I ran to my room, got my glove, and left as fast as I could, Danny continued after an unforeseen delay. The day we were sent home because of the water main break, I caught Aunt Debbie with Daddy again. This time, he was sitting on the couch and Aunt Debbie was sitting on the floor. He was calling her obscene names again. It was horrible. As I turned to leave, I saw Grandma's prescription pill bottle on the kitchen table. I grabbed it and ran to my treehouse, drank all the pills and washed them down with a bottle of water. That's when Uncle Jack found me and saved me. I was afraid to tell anyone about Daddy and Aunt Debbie. I knew Mom would get mad. Grandma and Grandpa would be mad too. Daddy would be in big trouble, and I was afraid he would hurt me like he did Aunt Debbie for swearing at him. That's why I ran away last night and snuck into Uncle Jack's room. I was scared, and I knew Uncle Jack would never let Daddy hurt me. Uncle Jack never touched me, in a way that I didn't need to be touched. He's not like that, Danny finished, and tears ran down her cheeks. There was complete silence this time, unlike the bedlam that had erupted a few minutes earlier. I thought about the situation and realized that I needed to speak up. I owe Marion, Chester, Dottie, and especially Danny an apology, I began. I discovered Debbie and Dave the day Danny saw me throwing my lunch out of my stomach into the street. I was so upset and angry that I was afraid I was going to kill Debbie and Dave. I decided to just walk away and think it over. Foolishly, I decided to just divorce Debbie and not say anything about her and Dave to anyone. I believed I would spare you all this pain. I thought Debbie and Dave would come to their senses after I announced that I was divorcing Debbie. I thought that deep down she would realize that I had to deal with what was going on. That would leave one family intact. In fact, I'm the one who made this whole mess, I said regretfully. If I'd just met with Debbie and Dave, we'd probably be where we were now, but without Danny being so traumatized. I convinced myself that I was taking the high road, but that wasn't the case. I was just taking the highway for wimps. I had a feeling of inadequacy after watching Dave with Debbie for a couple minutes. He owned her. After almost 20 years of self-indulgence, I suddenly realized that I hadn't even begun to scratch her itch. I think that's why I decided to ride off into the sunset, rather than listen to Debbie blandly explain to me what a pathetic excuse of a husband and lover I was. I told myself I was protecting the innocent victims of this pair of lunatics. In reality, I was afraid to face the truth Debbie was telling me. And now Danny has paid the price. I'm sorry, Danny. Uncle Jack, Danny exclaimed, jumping off the bed and hugging me with tears in her eyes. I don't think there's anyone here to arrest, the female detective admitted. There are a couple people who would probably like me to just shoot them, but I'm not going to do that. I have to go file a report. I suggest you both leave with me to avoid further trouble. I don't think this is a good time to try to explain or apologize. Dave helped Debbie up and led her out of the room. Marion hugged Danny and me while they both cried heartily. Chester and Dottie moved closer and stroked Marion's back, trying to comfort her. No one said anything. No one knew what to say. The end!